The Galactic Federation's Classification Committee voted unanimously, and with palpable relief, to label Earth a Category 3 DeathWorld, a title that roughly translated to place even bacteria avoid. Most species recoiled at the planet's metrics: gravity strong enough to compress spines, oxygen levels that spontaneously combusted forests, and weather systems that hurled ice, fire, and wind sharp enough to flay flesh. But humans thrived here. They bred here. They built cities atop tectonic fault lines and dunked fried dough in liquefied cocoa beans for fun. Worse, they seemed oblivious to their own lethality. When the Federation proposed a cultural exchange to study these contradictions, the response was universal: let the Glimm do it. The Glimm were idealists, pacifists, diplomats who dissolved in mild drizzle and communicated in bioluminescent ripples that humans, with their crude ocular organs, would misinterpret as pretty lights. They arrived in New York during what locals called hurricane season, a term the Glimm mistook for a festive calendar event. Earth tourism, ever eager to monetize disaster, greeted them with pamphlets titled "Survive and Thrive," and a street vendor named Dave, whose pet king cobra had better manners than most senators. No one told the Glimm about Australia, or the squirrels, or the human knack for weaponizing anything, including nostalgia and viral hashtags. But the galaxy would learn. It always did. Chapter 1. The Everglades breathed. Dave Johnson felt it in the swamp's humid exhale, and in the way the cypress knees rose like skeletal fingers from the muck, knuckled and unyielding. It was a living thing, this swamp, a hungry green-gilled beast that swallowed sunlight and spat out mosquitoes the size of thumbtacks. He waded through waist-deep water, Noodle coiled around his shoulders like a scaly stole, her hood flared but relaxed. The cobra's tongue flicked at his ear, tasting the air. "Danger close," she seemed to say. Dave agreed. "Easy, girl," he murmured, his voice a graveled hum. The water rippled ahead. A gator's eyes broke the surface, obsidian beads glinting with prehistoric patience. Dave stilled. Noodle's muscles tensed. He didn't reach for the knife at his belt. Instead, he locked eyes with the creature, a silent negotiation. "You don't want me. I'm all gristle and guilt." The gator sank slowly, leaving a trail of bubbles. Guilt. It followed him here, into the sweat-soaked silence of the mangroves. 5 years since Kandahar. 5 years since Martina's scream had been swallowed by a sandstorm, since the evac chopper's blades had thumped overhead like a failing heart. Dave had held his friend's dog tags as the medics shook their heads. No room for the dead, they'd said. He'd thrown the tags into the storm after that. Let the desert keep them. Noodle nudged his jaw, pulling him back. The swamp was safer than his skull. The shack he called home stood on stilts, its wood warped and webbed with mildew. Inside, maps of survival routes papered the walls, annotated with shorthand only he understood. Fire ants here, water snakes there, quicksand, probably. A framed photo of his old unit sat dusty on a shelf, Martina's grinning too wide, Forever 22. Dave didn't look at it. He fed Noodle a thawed rat, her coils tightening around the meal. Bon appetit, princess. The cobra ignored him, her focus surgical. The knock came at sunset. A woman stood on his porch, her suit too crisp for the swamp. Earth tourism badge. Rodriguez, the tag read. She eyed Noodle with a twitch. "Mr. Johnson, we need you to host dignitaries." Dave snorted. "I give swamp tours, not tea parties. They're aliens." He waited for the punchline. None came. Rodriguez shoved a tablet at him. A gelatinous blob pulsed on screen, its surface rippling with colors like oil on water. The Glimm, the caption read, "Diplomatic envoys, Category 3 DeathWorld exchange program. They melt in rain," Rodriguez said. "And we're throwing them a hurricane party in New York." Nigh Times Square was a neon aneurysm. Dave stood under an awning, Noodle hidden in a ventilated backpack, as the first raindrops fell. The Glimm delegation oozed beside him, their translucent bodies shuddering at every gust. They communicated in bioluminescent ripples, indigo for alarm, gold for curiosity. Right now, it was all indigo. Relax, Dave muttered. Rain's just water with a bad attitude. A Glimm pulsed crimson. Danger. The hurricane hit like a god's hangover. Tourists stampeded as winds yanked umbrellas from their hands and hurled them skyward. The Glimm quivered, their edges beginning to blur. Dave cursed, slinging his pack off. He sprinted to a souvenir cart, snatched a dozen I Heart NY umbrellas, and duct-taped them into a tarp dome. Get under, he barked. The Glimm slithered beneath, their colors flickering in gratitude. Rodriguez radioed from a van. Get them to Central Park. The Federation's watching. Central Park. In this, there's squirrels. The park was a war zone. Ancient oaks thrashed like drunk giants. The Glimm huddled under the umbrella fortress, their forms quaking as Dave led them down a muddy path. A creature darted across the trail, fluffed tail, beady eyes, incisors like hypodermics. Squirrel, Dave said, harmless. The rodent paused, hissed, plink. A acorn hit Dave's boot. Then another, and another, each notched with bite marks. Oh, you've got to be kidding. The squirrel launched itself at his thigh. Dave swatted it, but 3 more dropped from the branches, fangs bared. The Glimm flashed panic orange. Back, back. He herded them toward a rock slide, Noodle's hood flaring from the pack. The squirrels advanced, a furry militia. Dave grabbed a stick, flicked it like a rifle. Beat it, Chuckles. One pounced. He batted it mid-air. It hit a tree, shook itself, and screeched. The Glimm throbbed violet, a color he hadn't seen yet. Amusement. Laugh it up, jelly beans. Dave grumbled. The hot sauce incident was worse. They took shelter under a bridge, the Glimm's bioluminescence casting wavering light on the graffiti. Dave's friend Sal, a street vendor, arrived with refugee tacos. Extra salsa verde, yeah? Sal said. The Glimm prodded a taco. A tendril extended, tasting the sauce. Then the alien detonated. Not literally, but close. The Glimm's core turned magma red, its body bubbling like molten wax. It flopped into the Hudson to cool off, while Rodriguez screamed about interstellar lawsuits. Dave stared at the taco. Note to self, aliens can't handle capsaicin. Noodle peered from his pack, flicking her tongue at the chaos. That night, in a safe house, a renovated sewage plant, Dave cleaned mud from his boots. The Glimm huddled in dehumidified terrariums, their colors dimmed. One pulsed softly at him. Virile, he dubbed it. Gold swirls, persistent. He opened the terrarium. What? Virile extended a tendril, mimicking his motions with the boot brush. Yeah, glamorous work. Dave's chest tightened. Martinez used to mock his obsession with gear maintenance. You gonna marry that rifle, Danger Noodle? The nickname had stuck. Virile's glow warmed almost, comforting. Rodriguez stormed in. The Federation's pulling the plug. You're taking the Glimm to Australia. Fix this. Australia? Dave laughed bitterly. Why not just throw them into a wood chipper? There's a hike, a bonding experience. Show Earth's not a death world. Dave glanced at Virile. The Glimm's light dimmed. He knew that look. It was the same one he'd worn in Kandahar. Chapter 2. The outback was a cracked jawbone. Its red earth split open under a sky bleached of mercy. Dave stepped off the transport plane. Noodle coiled tight around his forearm, her scales shimmering like polished onyx in the relentless sun. The heat hit him like a fist. Dry. Suffocating. The kind that parched the lungs and left the tongue thick with dust. Behind him, the Glimm oozed cautiously onto the tarmac, their gelatinous forms rippling in hues of wary turquoise. Virile pulsed gold at the edges, a flicker of resolve, or maybe just indigestion from the flight. Welcome to Australia, Dave muttered, squinting at the horizon. where even the air wants you dead. Earth tourism had dumped them in a quaint outpost, a tin-roofed shack surrounded by a fence strung with barbed wire and sun-blistered kangaroo bones. The Glimm huddled under a tarp Dave rigged from the plane's cargo netting, their bodies quivering in the shade. He watched them, this quivering council of jelly, and wondered how the hell he'd become a babysitter for creatures that could dissolve in a light drizzle. Martinez would have laughed himself sick, but Martinez wasn't here, just Noodle, flicking her tongue at a fly, and the gilt, older than the dust. They set out at dawn, the ground crunching like burnt toast underfoot. Dave's pack held 2 liters of water, a first aid kit, and a satellite phone Rodriguez had shoved into his hands. For emergencies, she'd said. He'd considered lobbing it into the scrub, but kept it for the Glimm. Priorities. The Glimm moved in a tight cluster, their bioluminescence muted to conserve energy. Viral drifted near Dave, mimicking his gait in undulating waves. It was almost companionable, if you ignored the part where they were marching into a furnace. By midday, the sun hung like a white-hot coin, searing the saltbush into brittle skeletons. Dave rationed the water, a mouthful for himself, a splash poured into a collapsible dish for Noodle. The cobra drank daintily, her hood relaxed, but her eyes never stopped scanning. She knew, the outback wasn't a place, it was a predator. The Glimm didn't ask for water. They pulsed a question in soft violet. "You're made of goo," Dave said. "You'll live." Viral's glow dimmed. Disapproval. The Dropbears struck at dusk. Dave had heard the stories. Koalas turned feral, armed with claws like steak knives, and a taste for tourist flesh. He'd dismissed it as bushman bullshit. But then the first shadow dropped from a gum tree, all matted fur and milky eyes, and he remembered everything here wants to kill you. Noodle struck first, a blur of black and ivory, her fangs sinking into the creature's throat. It screeched, a sound like nails on slate, and thrashed in the dust. 2 more descended, their bellies distended, rabid. Dave grabbed a rock, smashed it into a furry skull, but another latched onto his boot, teeth gnawing at the leather. "Move," he barked at the Glimm. They didn't. Instead, Viral surged forward, its gelatinous body flattening into a viscous sheet. It smothered the Dropbear on Dave's leg, clogging its nostrils, its maw. The creature writhed, suffocating, as the other Glimm enveloped the remaining beasts in a suffocating embrace. When it was over, Dave crouched beside Viral, whose form had thinned translucent as old glass. "You didn't have to do that." The Glimm rippled gold. "Yes, we did." Noodle nudged Viral with her snout, a gesture that might have been gratitude, or curiosity. Dave didn't ask. Nightfall brought cold sharp enough to slice skin. They camped in a hollow, Dave hacking thorny branches to build a fire. The Glimm huddled close, their bioluminescence casting wavering shadows. Viral extended a tendril toward the flames, mesmerized. "Don't touch it," Dave warned. "You'll evaporate." The tendril withdrew, chastised. He opened a can of beans, the smell metallic and greasy. Noodle refused her share, opting instead to bask near the fire, her scales drinking in the heat. The Glimm pulsed in a slow rhythm, a shared wavelength. Dave wondered if they were praying, or plotting. Rodriguez called on the satellite phone. "The Federation's watching. Keep them alive." "No shit," Dave said. But the line was dead. He stared at the Glimm. Viral met his gaze, its core shimmering with something like trust. "Don't," Dave wanted to say. "I'm not worth it." The funnel web spiders found them at dawn. It started with a whimper, a high-pitched keening from one of the Glimm. Dave followed the sound to a crevice in the rocks, where a spider the size of his fist had sunk its fangs into the alien's gelatinous flesh. The Glimm's bioluminescence flickered erratically, panic red, venomous. Dave muttered, prying the spider loose with a stick. It lunged at him, but Noodle struck mid-air, snapping its carapace with a wet crunch. The bitten Glimm trembled, its form collapsing inward, like a deflating balloon. The others gathered around it, their colors bleeding into a collective indigo. Dave crouched, useless, until Viral did something he'd never seen. It split. A portion of its mass tore away, oozing into the spider's nest, sealing the burrow with a quivering living plug. The bitten Glimm stabilized, its color returning to a weak turquoise. Viral, now half its original size, pulsed faintly. "You're gonna get yourself killed," Dave said, but his voice lacked its usual edge. He handed Viral his canteen. "A sacrifice for a sacrifice." The tick-tock twist came during a rare moment of respite. They'd found a billabong, a murky pond fringed with reeds. The Glimm basked at the water's edge, their forms plumping with absorbed moisture. Dave sat with Noodle in the shade, cleaning grit from his knife. Rodriguez's van arrived in a cloud of dust. She tossed him a phone. "You're trending." The screen showed a video, Viral battling Dropbears, set to a thumping EDM track. #DeathWorld challenges had 10 million views. Another clip, Noodle stalking a lizard, captioned "Snake Queen Slay." "The Glimm's leadership loves it," Rodriguez said. "They're staying, for the cultural outreach." Dave stared at the Glimm. Viral met his eyes, its glow dimming to a mournful gray. He understood then, the aliens' silent pleas, their trapped desperation. Earth tourism had weaponized their suffering. "They want to leave," Dave said. Rodriguez smiled. "And lose this PR goldmine? Not a chance." Noodle hissed, low and venomous, as the van sped away. That night, Dave dreamt of Martinez. They were back in Kandahar, sand stinging their eyes. Martinez laughed, reloading his rifle. "You're a shitshot, Danger Noodle." The grenade came from nowhere. Dave lunged, but his boots were sludge, his arms lead. Martinez's scream dissolved into the storm. He woke to Noodle's tongue flicking his cheek. The Glimm surrounded him, their bioluminescence soft as candlelight. Viral pulsed gold. A question. "I'm fine," Dave lied. But the Glimm knew. They always did. By week's end, the Outback had carved them into raw, brittle versions of themselves. Dave's lips were split, his skin leather. The Glimm had learned to mimic the color of the rocks, hiding from the sun, their forms pared down by sacrifice. Noodle grew listless, her strikes slower, her hood rarely flared. They reached the hike's endpoint, a bluff overlooking a sun-baked valley. Rodriguez's team waited with cameras, drones buzzing like flies. "Smile for the Federation," she chirped. The Glimm huddled, their colors dull. Viral pulsed once at Dave, a single gold ripple. "Help us." He turned to Rodriguez. "They're done. They're stars," she snapped. "And so are you." A drone zoomed in on Noodle. The cobra reared, hissing, as the Jabojane logo flashed on the feed. "Slither with me." Live. Dave's hand found Viral's quivering form. Cold, thin, dying. He made a decision. Chapter 3. The monsoon came howling out of nowhere, a feral beast unchained. One moment the sky was a bleached sheet, the sun a merciless eye. The next, thunderheads boiled over the horizon, bruised purple and swollen with rage. Dave smelled the storm before he saw it, a metallic tang in the air, the scent of ionized desperation. Noodle tightened around his neck, her tongue flicking rapidly. "Danger. Danger." "Understood," Dave muttered, scanning the scrubland for shelter. The Glimm quivered beside him, their bioluminescence flaring panicked indigo. Raindrops began to fall, fat and heavy, cratering the dust. The first drop hit Viral's gelatinous form, carving a divot into its surface. The alien recoiled, pulsing crimson. Dave's mind raced. Quicksand ravines to the east. Rock overhangs picked clean by locusts. Nothing. The Outback offered no sanctuary, only the promise of a slow dissolve. He yanked the cargo netting from his pack, the same netting he'd rigged as a tarp weeks ago, and began lashing it between two skeletal gum trees. The Glimm huddled beneath, their bodies already thinning under the drizzle. Vril oozed forward, its form shuddering as it helped anchor the net with tendrils of its own biomass. "Stop," Dave barked. "You'll melt." Vril pulsed gold. "So will you." The storm swallowed them whole. Rain fell in sheets, horizontal and ice-cold. The netting sagged, pooling water like a leaden belly. Dave braced his boots against the tree roots, muscles burning. Noodle slithered into his shirt, her cold scales pressed to his chest. The Glimm pressed closer, their bioluminescence guttering like dying stars. A flash flood tore through the gully below, a roaring brown serpent carrying debris, branches, animal carcasses, the twisted remains of a drone. Dave's grip slipped. The netting groaned. Martinez's voice, sand-scoured and familiar. "You gonna hold the whole sky up? Danger, Noodle?" "Shut up," Dave hissed through clenched teeth. Vril trembled beside him. A tendril brushed his wrist, cool and gelatinous. "Why?" it seemed to ask. "Why fight?" The answer was a reflex, carved into his marrow. "Because someone has to." The shelter failed at midnight. A gum tree snapped, its roots ripped from the thirsty soil. The netting collapsed, dousing them in a deluge. The Glimm screamed, a soundless vibrating horror as their bodies began to liquefy. Vril surged toward Dave, wrapping what remained of its form around his torso, shielding him from the brunt of the rain. Acidic pain seared his skin where the Glimm made contact, its body dissolving as it absorbed the water. "Stop!" Dave clawed at Vril, but the alien held fast. "Sacrifice." The word echoed in the storm, in the ghost of Martinez's laugh. He stumbled downhill, half blind. Noodle coiled in his shirt. The Glimm followed, their forms reduced to quivering puddles, their light nearly extinguished. A boulder loomed ahead, its underside eroded into a shallow cave. Dave dragged them inside, his breath ragged, his hands blistered from Vril's acidic embrace. The Glimm pooled in the dirt, barely cohesive. Vril was the size of a fist now, its golden core dimmed to a faint ember. "Stupid," Dave rasped, pressing his canteen to what passed for the Glimm's mouth. Water dribbled through it. "Useless." "You don't owe me anything." Vril pulsed once. "Yes we do." The satellite phone crackled. Rodriguez, her voice tinny and frayed. "The Federation's pulling the plug. Extraction in 30. Be ready." Dave stared at the Glimm. Vril's light flickered. Don't trust her. He didn't. Memories bled together. Martinez's body vanishing into dust. Earth Tourism's cameras feasting on the Glimm's pain. Noodle's eyes reflecting the firelight. Loyalty isn't a contract. It's a choice. Dave fished the burner phone from his pack, the one he'd bought from a smuggler in Darwin. 2 rings. A voice answered, gruff and familiar. "Jack's here. I need a ride," Dave said. "Non-union. Coordinates." He read them off, ignoring Rodriguez's incoming calls. Noodle peered at him, her gaze unblinking. "Traitor?" she seemed to ask. "Or savior?" The drones came first. Earth Tourism's machines descended at dawn, sleek and humming, cameras whirring. Rodriguez's face filled a holographic screen projected over the rocks. "Dave Johnson, you are in breach of contract. Surrender the delegates." The Glimm quivered, their bioluminescence flaring panicked indigo. Vril oozed toward Dave, a silent plea. He stepped forward, Noodle coiled around his arm like a living weapon. "You want them? Come down here and take them." The drones fired taser nets. Dave rolled, Noodle striking at the machines with fanged precision. One drone sparked and crashed. Another net grazed his leg, the voltage seizing his muscles. He fell cursing, as Rodriguez's voice boomed. "You're nothing, Johnson." A washed-up grunt playing hero. Vril surged. The Glimm launched itself at the nearest drone, its gelatinous body smothering the rotors. The machine whined, stalled and plummeted. Vril hit the ground in a splatter, its core guttering. No. Dave crawled toward it, Noodle hissing at the remaining drones. He cradled Vril's remnants, a palm-sized smear of gold. Pathetic, Martinez would have said. You can't even keep a blob alive. The roar of engines cut through the chaos. Jax's rust bucket plane skimmed the ridge, its bay door open. Clocks ticking. Danger. Noodle. Dave shoved the Glimm into his canteen, their forms sloshing weakly, and ran. They didn't make it. A drone missile struck the plane's wing as it lifted. The explosion was a bright, soundless bloom at first. Then the shockwave hit, throwing Dave into the dirt. Fire rained. Jax's voice screamed over the comms. Then static. Noodle was a streak of black in the smoke, her strikes frantic as drones closed in. Dave clutched the canteen, the Glimm's light fading. His ribs screamed. His vision blurred. Failure. Again. Rodriguez's drone hovered above him, camera gleaming. Smile. Dave. You're viral. He spat blood. Go to hell. Already there, she said as the world went dark. Chapter 4. The world returned in fragments. First the smell, burnt plastic and wet clay. Then the pain, a white-hot brand searing through Dave's ribs. He blinked, his vision swimming into focus on a cracked concrete ceiling, the air thick with the greasy tang of industrial disinfectant. Noodle lay coiled on his chest, her hood flared, tongue flicking his chin. Alive. Alive. The Glimm sloshed weakly in the canteen beside him, their bioluminescence reduced to faint pulses, like distant lighthouse beams. Vril's golden core was a smudge, barely a thumbprint of light. Dave's fingers brushed the canteen, the metal cold against his blistered skin. Failure clawed at his throat, sharper than the pain. A television droned in the corner of the room, its screen cracked. A news anchor grinned beneath the headline. DeathWorld debacle goes viral. Clips played. Vril smothering drones. Noodle strikes in slow motion. Dave's bloodied snarl at the camera. The Cameron blared. Humanity's last stand or marketing stunt. Ratings skyrocketing. The anchor chirped. Earth tourism stocks up 300%. Dave's fist clenched. The movement sent a lightning bolt through his side. Noodle hissed, not at him, but at the screen. Yeah, girl. I know. They'd been dumped in a derelict Earth tourism outpost, its walls papered with faded posters of smiling hikers and captions like "Adventure awaits." The irony wasn't lost on him. A first aid kit lay gutted on the floor, bandage wrappers and empty antiseptic vials littering the tiles. Dave's boots were gone, his feet wrapped in shredded cargo pants. He limped to the window. Outside the outback stretched, scorched and indifferent. A drone buzzed overhead, its camera lens glinting. Dave flipped it off. The canteen trembled in his hand. The Glimm's light fluttered, a moth against glass. Vril's golden smudge pulsed once. Alive. Alive. Hang on. Dave muttered, though he didn't know how. Noodle slithered to the floor, her body still singed from the firefight. She nudged the satellite phone under a desk, its screen spider-web but lit. Dave crouched, wincing, and tapped it. A live stream chat flooded the feed. #save the Glimm. Finnish Glitter 69. Sauna Squad assembling Glimm Cozies. Snake Mom 420. Where's Noodle? A notification blinked. Crowdfunding goal met 12 million credits. Dave stared. The Glimm's canteen fogged with their faint hopeful light. They moved at moonrise. Dave's body screamed with every step, but the Glimm's dimming pulses were a metronome in his skull. Faster. Faster. Noodle led the way, her scales blending with the night. A shadow among shadows. The outpost's fence was a joke. Rusted chain link. Toppled by time, they slipped through, into the desert's open maw. The stars were different here. Not the Everglades smudged watercolor, but a knife-edge glitter, cold and precise. Dave's breath fogged in the air. The outback's daytime furnace replaced by a chill that gnawed bone deep. The Glimm sloshed, their light a faint guide. Martina's voice, half mocking. You're really gonna trust a bunch of space jello? Danger Noodle. Dave adjusted his grip on the canteen. Better than trusting humans. Noodle flicked her tongue in agreement. The rendezvous point was a dry riverbed, its cracked mud veined with ghostly salt. A figure waited, backlit by a holographic map projected from a wrist device. Female, broad-shouldered, her hair a buzz-cut halo. Jax. You look like hell, she said, eyeing his bandages. You try babysitting melting diplomats. Jax smirked, nodding at the canteen. They in there. The Glimm pulsed. Verl's gold brightened a fraction. Charging stations this way. Jax led them to a modified rover, its roof lined with solar panels. Finnish fan club rigged it. Says it'll rehydrate him. Inside, a clear tank bubbled with electrolyte fluid, its surface studded with hashtag stickers. #GlimmGang. #DeathWorld Diplomacy. Dave poured the Glimm into the tank. Their forms billowed like ink and water, colors seeping back, turquoise, gold, violet. Verl's core reignited. A miniature sun. Tick-tock, Jax said, checking the rover's dash. Earth Tourism's got scouts in the area. Noodle coiled on the tank's lid, her reflection warped in the fluid. Dave watched the Glimm revive, their bioluminescence painting the rover's interior in undulating waves. Alive. Alive. La Federation's envoy arrived at dawn. A ship descended, sleek and silent, its hull iridescent as a soap bubble. The Glimm floated in their tank, rippling formal patterns, diplomatic codes. Jax guessed. Dave stood barefoot in the dust. Noodle draped over his shoulders like a living epaulet. The envoy was a Glimm, triple Verl's size, its core a cold azure. It extruded a tendril, pressing it to the tank. A data transfer, maybe. A conversation. Verl's gold flared. Argument. Negotiation. Dave's ribs ached. The envoy retracted, its surface rippling. A hologram burst to life above the tank. Earth swaddled in a glowing ribbon labeled Cultural Sanctuary. They're staying, Jax translated, squinting at her wrist device. And you're getting a medal. No, Dave said. A school. Survival tactics. Co-run by Verl. The Glimm pulsed. The tank's fluid sloshed as Verl pressed a tendril to the glass, mirroring Dave's hand. Martina's grinning. Teacher looks good on you, man. The hologram shifted. A live feed of Noodle's terrarium, now gold-plated. Her reality show logo blinking. Slither with me. Season 2 now streaming. Dave snorted. Traitor. Noodle flicked his ear. The school rose where the Everglades kissed the suburbs. A ramshackle fortress of salvaged metal and hurricane-proof glass. Students came. Veterans. Biologists. TikTokers. With more courage than sense. Verl taught climate adaptation via gelatinous demonstration. Dave taught how to wrestle gators, read storms, and survive venomous squirrels. Noodle had her own wing, cameras perpetually rolling. She'd developed a taste for organic mice, and head bumps from admirers. At dusk, Dave sat on the porch, a Glimm-proof umbrella overhead. Verl oozed beside him, its form now threaded with scar-like streaks. A map of sacrifices. We're a damn meme, Dave said, scrolling through #DeathWorld survival hacks. Verl pulsed gold, projecting a hologram of their TED Talk announcement. Why loyalty likes. You're enjoying this. The Glimm's ripples deepened. Yes. The TED Talk audience stared. A sea of polished faces and hollow recorders. Dave stood center stage.
Noodle coiled on the podium, Verl a shimmering orb beside him. Loyalty's not a hashtag, Dave said. It's showing up when the sky's falling, when the likes stop, a murmur, a cough. Verl pulsed. The hologram shifted. Not Dave's slides, but venomous squirrels, rendered life-size and hurtling toward the crowd. Screams. Then laughter. Dave smirked. And sometimes, it's pranking idiots. Noodle flicked her tongue. The cameras caught it all, and the Glimm glowed like the sun they'd fought to save.